So yeah, I didn't have time to like rehearse this and memorize it perfectly and stuff, so I killed a tree. I'm sorry. And I'm just like pretend that this is a skull and that I have a rough collar and that I'm actually doing a good job. So hi, yes, I'm GP. I'm Vector Poem on Twitter. And yeah, this is my talk. Mattie Brice made a game called Mani Tunes. It's cool and you should play it. It helped me understand a little about what her life is like. She wrote about the process of making it on her blog. She looked at several different tools first. On her blog, she called this choosing vocal chords. Because RPG Maker was the best fit for her skills and the kind of thing that she wanted to make, though it didn't cost a whole lot of money. She also looked at open source tools, but found them like too programming intensive and too fiddly. This is completely true that they are this, and it bums me out. A huge advantage of open source software is that nobody has complete control over it. The company that made Game Maker let that tool like decline. Adobe let Flash decline, and then other companies decided to kill it. Windows 8, I have this written in this paragraph. So open source is cool and all. Nerds like me know that it's cool, but at the end of the day, people pass up free tools because they don't feel they can use them comfortably. Different people have different songs that they want to sing, and one set of vocal cords doesn't fit everyone. People shouldn't need to dedicate their lives to game design and the huge range of skills it requires just to make a game. A statement that I hope is uncontroversial with the folks gathered here: more new voices are always, always better. It means people who couldn't speak before are now speaking. It's better for our medium and it's better for humankind. Free and open source tools should be everywhere, but they're not. This ends up being due to cultural and design problems. Some of the folks who make open source software are wrapped up in their own world. Some don't understand good design, which is understandable because good design is hard. Also, some of them make software for themselves, and they don't particularly care if other people can use it easily. That's not always bad, but sometimes it goes as far as them not wanting other people to use it unless you pass a certain coolness test, which is to say, unless you're like them. This actually means we are failing people we haven't met yet. If we don't make the right tools, some people will remain without voices. Twine was a new set of vocal cords for people who are good with words. The past year has seen this revolution in word-based games, led by some of the people speaking here today. It's no coincidence that this has led lots of new people, new voices, into making games. And because Twine is free, no company has been able to muck it up for us. Instead, people have been able to extend it and fix it. So Twine is great, but words aren't the only way to say things. There are thousands of people out there drawing and making comics and taking photos and collecting strange images on Tumblr. It's not reasonable to expect them to learn programming just to dip their toe into game creation. There was a great tool that fit this description back in the 80s, before the web even existed. It was called HyperCard, and Apple killed it in 2004 when they realized it was incompatible with their new vision of the future. Again, somebody owned it and it was theirs to ruin. The thing is, the web re-implemented a lot of what HyperCard did. So if you were going to make it today, it would be a waste to not just use the web as your output format the same way that Twine did. Anyone with a web browser can play a Twine game, and that's hugely significant. So early this year, I started planning out a tool called Dreamer. The basic ideas are HyperCard-like visual hypertext stories, export to web, open source and cross-platform, programming free that you can lift the hood and use JavaScript for deeper interactivity if you get the itch. Just to be clear, I've got some design notes for it, some mock-ups, and a GitHub repo with like a few days work on it. It's barely started. I knew this thing was worth working on, though, when I described it to an old friend of mine who was an indie comics artist in New York. And out of the blue she said, "Oh, I could make a game with that." Something that she had never considered before. The game industry does need to be smashed to exist in a perpetual state of being smashed, but it isn't a building somewhere or even a government institution that can be deposed. It's a set of ideas that lots of people are working under. And the way to smash it is to replace those ideas with better ones. So actually not very much like smashing at all. Most of the ideas that will help bring this about exist in the heads of people that we haven't met yet and aren't here today. All we have to do is help them realize that they have voices, and tools are a huge part of that. We've made some great progress, but we're not there yet. So I have a day job making games, and recently an unspecified cool thing happened there that's very exciting for me, but it means that I may not be able to get back to Dreamer and work on it for a while. And like I said, it's barely started. But I'll bet a decent chunk of the audience here are better programmers than me, so I'd love to talk to people about helping continue it so we can get this tool made. because, you know, I'm not important. It's like, I believe that this is a simple idea whose time has come. I'm VectorPalm on Twitter, and my email is jp@vectorpalm.com. And that's what I have to say.
And if you're not sure about that, then find a friend that, you know, can also do this with you. It doesn't take a lot. And two really practical concerns. One, if you're running a meetup group, be regular. So hold it in the same place, hold it in the same time, and let people know about it well in advance. And the last thing is, speak to people. Speak to the press, speak to your friends, use word of mouth, leverage all the tools around you to help this community grow. I think it's super important. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up is J-Dub.
So screen check is when you check the screen. It's very important, and every game should have it. Tetris would be another game with screen check because you would have more. So it's not just about screen check, it's also about camera, and I'm just going to throw a lot of weird little tricks I think so in our game, I spent more time in the screen check than most of the enemy time. The camera isn't just following like the player, like you should show where your player is heading, where he's standing, all that stuff that's important to gameplay. Use the camera to move them ahead and whatever. Like all the enemies in the game have a certain kind of weight, and you just check what enemies and bullets are near and are they dangerous, and just calculate the center of those, and the camera moves a bit in that direction. And that way you can just feel, you're not really noticing, but you feel like, oh, something is heading my way and I'm going to die. And then you die, but it's not unfair because you knew it was happening. So how I do camera is basically you have this point where your camera should be, and then you smooth in that direction, but you also smooth the player's feet in another direction. You're obviously interrelating, and it all will look really good. You just keep tweaking that. And also show excitement. The spin shake in Ultras is just a random shake, but it actually favors the nearest explosion and it shakes a bit more in that direction. And I think that just shows more explosions, which is good for action games. The camera is just like it also emphasizes when you're nearing the water, the camera moves down a bit. Just think about all that stuff that's important to the gameplay. Take your camera, think about it as well. So, about shaking, you can do many different ways. You can just have a rev and offset for that Y and the X axis, but that's actually weird. You can make it in square, so you can make it circle based. Actually, Bo Gled told me that he once tried to make shake like the way a phone works. Instead of just shaking randomly, you rotate your pointing that it's supposed to be looks nice, but it's never got the chance to try it. Or you can kind of bounce the camera in a direction. That directional shake, like when a ball hits the ball, marking you is that being used to just move in that direction, kind of bounce back a bit. That stuff is nice. You can try. Recently played a game that wasted the game. It was like a front-line shooter. And when you fire, the camera also moves away from the gun. And like some guns are really heavy and you go for 2 seconds. And firing moves the camera back to your phone. And that's something very good as well. And these are all just super simple tricks. It won't take you long to implement a screen check. You can make it a platformer. Like, oh, this doesn't need screen check, there's no violence. Like, this doesn't have to do with violence. If you're jumping and from a high place, you got your hand just shaking a little bit. Nobody's going to know it's in there, but you're going to feel it and you're going to feel better. It's easy to do and you should just throw it in there. That's fun.
Basically owners, and so you're back in the feudal system. Basically your work belongs to them and they can fire you and blah, blah, blah. You all know about this. So basically what I'm proposing is that the game industry, if you want to see the change that a lot of people are talking about, of games being created in a different way, I'm proposing that we need to change the structure of the business model, and that will create those different types of games. So this is not a new concept. Cooperatives have been here for a long time. There's running ones in San Francisco, like this one that I'm right here. And there's really big ones throughout the world, and there's a lot of help and funds that are given to cooperatives. So my only question to you guys is basically, why are people scared of doing co-ops? Are people into making games only because they want to make money? I mean, a lot of the independents here clearly are not. So what's the fear? Why do people don't want to share basically like 50-50?
No, I was waiting for a while.
Oh, okay.
I do think your card raises a lot of interest in customers.
Thank you.
I think I will probably comment on it in my speech today.
Okay, cool. My idea was to just read a list of like 10 reasons why co-ops are great. I don't want to totally waste my time if people have questions or anything about co-ops. So just questions? Yes, there are legal ways to set one up. I don't know the full of it. I'm not a lawyer, but there's actually help, and I can give you websites, and I have a link with you somewhere that you can read. But there's actual legal ways to do it. Yeah, of course.
Living in a cardboard box when you're 70 years old.
Of course, yeah. That's true. So, I mean, the big fear that I hear is people just not earning money. But I'll put it to you, like a lot of the independents, like going around here, have been going on for like 2 years, building one game without like money, basically. And like I said, there's actual funds to start co-ops. So there's like big organizations that give money to start co-ops. So all you need is to basically find people that you can get along with, that like you can share, and become a game studio that is a co-op. And actually that would be the first, because to my knowledge, there is absolutely no co-op game studio in existence. I mean, there's partnerships, which is different. A lot of people like say like, oh, I'll just be my 4 best friends and we'll partner up and we'll divide everything 25%, you know, and then if we're famous, we'll hire a bunch of people. But that's not the thought behind it. The thought behind it is to bring people in as partners. So everybody has a vote. It's a democratic thing. It's just like democracy. You're actually, you know, voting for a president. People take on different roles at different times. Yeah, that's pretty much it. If you have any questions, if you want to get my email, start a co-op, give me your name, I'll write it down and email people who are interested. Thank you.
Hey, so it's actually really cool. What I'm going to talk about. Yeah, no, the reason it's cool that I'm following that talk is because I actually used to volunteer at a co-op, and it was a really rad space. And one of the things that we accomplished with this co-op was we disseminated a lot of information and really personal stuff. And the way we did that was, well, I mean, so this talk was about sort of rethinking the business model of the industry. We're going to talk a little bit about rethinking the way that we distribute games. At my co-op, which was the SUNY Purchase Food Co-op in New York, we had a zine library, and a zine is kind of like a little magazine. It can be about anything. It could be printed on your computer. It could be copied on a fax machine. It's something that you made. It's something that's often personal, and it's something that you are distributing outside of the established publishing system, which I think is interesting to us as people who are maybe making games. I think the real conflict for people making games outside of big publishers has always been how to distribute it. In fact, I wrote a book on this, which I'm not going to plug, but it exists. Yeah, I think shareware CDs were one of our solutions back in the day before we had broadband internet to self-distributing small games. And in fact, I feel like models like that sort of live on because, for example, last year here, or rather there, at GDC, we had a GDC pirate card that contains something like 300 games by 100 different authors, sort of getting together, collaborating to surmount the publishing fees, the cost of getting a space at GDC to exhibit these games, and exhibiting them all together. And that's a fantastically creative solution to the problem of distributing our games, of getting attention for our games. And one of the important things is that we have to have each other's backs. We have to be repping each other to people who might potentially be interested in each other's games, who need to know about each other's games, who can tell the press about each other's games, who can tell the larger world about each other's games. And I think there are still a lot of creative solutions that we haven't come up with yet. There are still a lot of tools that we haven't built yet. But I think that if we are creative, and I'm pretty sure that we are, then there's a lot of potential for coming up with new ways, or even repurposing some of the older ways to distribute games. One of the things that I almost did a while ago was put a copy of one of my own games, a browser game, on a CD and make a little case for it and unseal it into a thrift store. I think there are a lot of ways we can be a little crafty, and the important thing is to get games to maybe people who would not see them otherwise. Because if we use the more familiar channels, then they're subjected to the more familiar filters. And I don't think that necessarily helps us very much. I think what's going to be important is to find new ways of getting stuff to new people. On the subject of zines, I happen to have a bunch of my zines with me today. And if anyone's interested in a zine swap, come up to me anytime and hand me a zine of yours, and I'll hand you a zine of mine. And I will be around for about another hour. Thanks.
I just found out that I am speaking. Hi, my name is Mattie Brice. And we're obviously in a very exciting and wonderful time with accessible design, new and diverse voices coming in and developing games. And I really want to impart an idea that I think is fundamental to my design from henceforth. And I really want to infect this with you all too. I hope that for the rest of my games there are going to be part dating sim, and I want everyone to actually make a lot more dating sims. And I want to tell you why I think you guys should start making games with dating sim elements in them. For one, if you haven't seen the work of Christine Love by now, and you're not infected with ideas of a medium that is completely owned by another country that we are not using whatsoever, I don't know what you're looking at. But otherwise, there are just so many elements that are not existent, both in the indie world and the AAA world, that are just ways to be explored in this thing. It's kind of like the idea I posed yesterday. Imagine if our AAA world, instead for every shooter, we had like a sim knockoff. How different our industry would be. How different our indie industry would be if it was that way. And so I kind of want everyone to imagine an industry, indie industry, when we talk about who figured us into happening dating sims. And I want to tell you some ideas that I have. For the first thing, I think that things like Twine games are becoming like our news games. They're becoming something everyone can do. Everyone can react to current events. And one current event that I have almost no affiliation to, but I want to make a game badly about, is about that college football player who got into this weird drama with an online girlfriend that didn't exist. And then we start to uncover that this online girlfriend that didn't exist was actually his best friend and a gay lover, and I couldn't say anything because he was in football. And I was like, wouldn't it be amazing if we could have a game that was like half Madden and half dating sim, and we had someone, and all the effects that happened in this dating sim affected us, hiding your lover, making sure you're going to practice, getting stat bonuses and minuses off of this. I have no idea how to do anything with a Madden, but someone here does, and I want someone to make that game to be socially relevant, and when it's doing something like that. I'm also very passionate about recently watching Downton Abbey, and I think many people are. Yeah, so I have an idea that I hope maybe we can have a Downton Abbey game jam or something. But I'm thinking about what is a Downton Abbey game? What are the ideas? And I'm like, my philosophy is take something and put a dating sim into it. So I was like, okay, let's just get like FTL and put a dating sim in it. And then have like a floating mansion in space where you trade your resources, which happen to be your daughters, and other things like that. And there's a whole bunch of wonderful things that can happen. Now, it just seems like this sort of thing is just, it's just what needs to happen. We're ignoring this large scale of like feelings and interactions and everything because we're just so conditioned by things that are like narrative, not narrative based, emotion based, romance based. And it's just like, even just by an accessible platform like Red Pie, I don't know why we're not making more of these games. So I'm hoping that you guys can be influenced in my philosophy of putting dating sims into all of your games right this instant. Every single thing that you're doing, do and then save it, make a copy, and add a dating sim to it, and see if it doesn't make it like 5 million times better. Thanks.
Mattie Brice.
It's called Marie Fulston Does a Really Important Job, you guys. I don't know if that's actually a funny name for a talk. Like, it really amused me. I hope that's enough. Yeah, okay. So anyway, Marie Fulston is like the boss lady of Wild Rumpus, which is the reason we're here. We ran a party last night and we're running a tournament over in the Moscone Centre main hall. So this talk is kind of about like, she doesn't get enough credit. So there was a recent bit of press we got because we made that game with Case Takahashi, which is amazing to get to do that. But so the thing came out and it listed the people in Wild Rumpus. First on the list was Ricky Haggett. It was like, you may know, because he does Honey Slug, he made Roach Says, and then next on the list was Dick, who also did that stuff there, and then me, who's done some things, nothing quite worth crediting, and then Marie, which is unfair, because Marie does most of the work. But she didn't get the credit. And it's partly because she doesn't make video games. So this is kind of like, it's really important. All the things that aren't making video games are really important to video games themselves. Like, being here, like this whole thing is fucking amazing. Like, the time, if you think about the time that the 4 of those guys spent organizing this, like, they could have made like 3 video games, right? But would video games as a cause be advanced more than if we were standing at park, or if there were three extra video games? Like, people who organize game jams, like, would video games be better if they just spent that time making games, or if they organize it, or if they make happen, or if there's an event, or the whole fucking thing of GDC, right? This is a massive fucking distraction. Like, think about, like, there's like 20,000 people here, 20,000 people who are like, maybe 3rd of actually game developers, right? Like, so you've got like fucking thousands thousands of game developers all with their schedules fucked up for like a week or 2 weeks or whatever, however long it takes. Like think about the amount of fucking man years spent on GDC every year. How many games could have been made in that time? But it's worth it, right? It's totally worth having this whole thing here. But it does matter. It's like, I don't know, I think I'm going to conclude by saying, I don't really, like often I think, like I don't really care about video games. Like, woo! I mean, I'm pretty sure I did when I started. But like, sometimes I just like, I'm not sure. But the thing that keeps me going is like, I know a lot of people who are just really cool and making really good things, and like, they're just brilliant people, like all these fucking talks, like brilliant people talking about brilliant things. And that's really inspiring. Like that matters a lot, and I think there should be credit for that. I think there should be credit for that, and I think it's kind of you need to do it explicitly. You need to explicitly credit saying this is an important thing. This is as important. Oh yeah, shit! I was going to quote Stephen Lavelle, which irritates me better if he was here. So he like one more minute. Okay, yeah, so Stephen Lavelle said on Twitter, like, you should not focus on anything, you just make games, which is stupid, because he's fucking amazing at keeping the community together. The amount of effort he puts into it, he organises so many game jams, he like, sets up forums, he actually just, like, keeps the fucking community alive, and that's, like, it's great for him. Like, it's great. I'm really appreciative of him doing that quite self-effacing way. And still he's like, no, just make it you. It's wrong. He's completely wrong. And it's also fantastic. Yeah.
I talk about how the game industry is screwing everyone. I will talk about how it's screwing the employees that work in it. Okay. So I will tell you a story that's like totally made up and not based on real people at all. So the game industry must be destroyed. So it's like two people who want to make an indie game, and like they found a company. They had this really cool idea. They announced the game, and they kind of start working on it, but then they fight and they hate each other. But one of them decides to like keep working on the game, and meanwhile they like hired a programmer to work on the game, but that programmer was not one of the original founders. He's just an employee, and the game is made eventually after years of like blood and sweat, no, not blood, tears and sweat and like crunch time, and eventually the game gets released. It makes a lot of money. Actually, it's a big success, and the original founder that left the company and never actually made any of the game gets to take half of that, right? Because that's the company's profit, and that founder gets to own that. But the employee that made half the game during all those years, after delay, ends up, back where they started, and they have to like find another job in the game industry and work on another project. They're back to their initial precarious condition. So, the game industry, if you go there, everybody is going to like be super proud of how it's huge and like making so much money and bigger than cinema and movies and all that. But there's also like all this talk, everybody's aware about how there's all this crunch time, like 85-hour work weeks. Every time a big game is released, like you can pretty much expect huge layoffs at your company, like that's just standard, all that. So like why does this happen? Like since apparently games are making so much money and so successful. Well, that's not like some aberration, it's not like some mistake or whatever. That's actually like how it's designed. This is how it works. In order for a game to be successful, it needs to actually the money from the sales need to go to other people than the people who make the game. That's how a game is successful. If the money from the sales go to the people who made the game, that's considered a not profitable game. The game needs to generate profits. It needs to make more money than the people, than is like paid to the people who made the game. So it's actually like this is how it works. And two ways of doing that are either making games that sell more and make more money, or actually treating employees like shit so that you can get more profit that way. And why do employees accept to be treated like that, right? So we have like everybody knows also that for the same people in the game industry are like super educated, super qualified, and for the same the same qualifications you can go in another industry and get paid way more. So why do people go in the game industry? It's because people they want to make games, right? There's all these students that have like this romantic idea of what the game industry is like, and they really want to get hired by a game company. Like BioWare gets like 1,000 resumes every month, I think, and the average length of time like of a career in the game industry is 5 years. So people just quit after 5 years. That's not a problem, right? People can be like burned by the companies because there's all these people like these French graduates who are ready to replace them. So and all these people who are graduates, they have some totally misguided idea of what making games is all about, right? They think that it's going to be like awesome and they'll make their dream game and they know nothing about real life. Like some game company was like offering one of the perks is they do your laundry for you. So it's like all these nerds coming up from university who are like they know nothing about life and they get screwed and exploited by these game companies until they're totally burned out and they don't have a life anymore because they've been on crunch time and whatever. So okay, so this is how so there's this culture, and one thing about this like culture, that is really promoted by game companies. They always talk about improving the corporate culture and how like everyone is really into making games, and like management doesn't even have to like force people to make games in a game company. If an employees decide that they want to spend some time with their family and actually only do the hours that they're being paid for, well, it's the other employees that will discipline them, right? The other employees will like reject them and be like, oh, but we're all like working on this project together, we need to see it through. Even though this project in the end is not theirs, they don't get to like own the game that they create. That it's the company that owns that. Once they lose their job, like that's not their project anymore. It's someone else. You can have a company where like a game was made by people who are not like none of them are working there anymore, but that game is still owned by that company. So some people like think that stuff like profit sharing is pretty cool, and that's a potential solution. So like if the game sells a lot of money, like the employees get money from it. That's actually a lie. Like it's terrible. Profit sharing is a total scam, because what happens is that even it's not like you're not. It's not like a ownership share of the company or whatever. With profit sharing, you basically it's a way for like the investors to put the risk, instead of putting the risk themselves in investing in the company and paying employees their salary, they put the risk on the employees themselves. But the employees still don't have any executive power with their share, right? Like profit sharing, you don't get to like you could be working on a game for 3 years and then management decides to cancel the game and you have the contract with profit sharing and you get nothing, right? And you don't get to have a say on whether the game gets cancelled or not. And this is totally outside of your control. Marketing could be doing a bad job and you won't see any profit sharing. You have like no say at all in how the company gets run or whatever. So what it is basically a way for management to put all the risk on the worker. Okay, Valve. Valve is a really cool company. Like everybody knows, at Valve, you don't have a job title. Everyone is like, everyone has the same status. People decide together how much they're paying themselves. There's all like. There's all like, you get to decide like what project you work on, right? Oftentimes, like in other game studios, you'll be working 3 years on some game that you care nothing about, but you have to do that, and it's your job. And you might think that the game is going to fail, and that if you have profit sharing options, you're certain that you're not going to get them. But there's nothing you can do about that. You're taken hostage, and you have to keep working on this project because it's not your decision. In Valve, people get to like basically decide what project they work on, and if a project is so shitty that nobody believes it's going to like be successful, it just doesn't get made. And this actually works, right? It's not like you don't actually need like this hierarchical management structure for a company to be successful, because as Valve shows, like they're pretty much the most successful company on PC, right? So it's not all good though, because if you look at Valve, that's basically Valve is a proof that this kind of this kind of structure can work, right? That you can have this awesome game company where there's like everyone just makes the game that they want to do, and there's no need for management, and there's no need for all that other bullshit that is typical to like the game industry. But in the end, at Valve, like the majority shareholder is still Gabe Newell, right? He's still the one who owns the whole company. If he decides to sell Valve someday, then all those employees who worked like for all these years, they worked their ass off to build this amazing, awesome, cool thing that is like Valve, and all the games they made. If one day Game Newell decides to sell it, they get nothing. Like Game Newell gets everything. So that's still a big problem. And there is no reason for the Valve employees to accept that, right? The only reason they accept that is because, well, this is basically how it is. Like, we don't, that's how life works. But basically, like tomorrow, all Valve employees could decide to like get together and like go form Valve 2, in another building next door, and then they decide to run it as a cooperative, and they all get to be, co-owners of Valve together, and any profit goes to all of them instead of going to Game Newell. And they can still hire Game Newell as a worker to work at Valve too, because I'm sure like he does his share of the work too. So like in other industries, like there are reasons why it's difficult to do that, right? So like if you're working in a factory, like you can't just decide to go start a new one with your friends because there's infrastructure. In the games industry, there's no infrastructure. Every game programmer has a computer, has everything that they need to like make video games. So you can just go and form, your video game co-op with your friends, and then everything will be awesome. I have so much more. Okay, so another thing. Okay, so games. The only way that you can make money selling games. So even if you have this awesome, game company, the only way that you can make money selling games is, well, in economics there's this thing called. Okay, so I forget what the word is, but basically food. If you eat food, like someone else cannot eat that food, right? And games, that's not the case. If you play, yeah, there's a better word, but I forget. So games, like basically, like games, it costs $0 to make a game available for free to everyone. There is absolutely no cost to that. You just put it on BitTorrent, and anyone can play the game. So the only way that money gets made in the industry is not by providing something to people. It's not by like providing a service or a good or whatever. The only way is by restricting access, right? You make money in video games by placing barriers, by saying anyone who is not able to afford this price doesn't get to play the game. Like only the people who are able to. Now this is really difficult to enforce because it's totally artificial. So you also spend a lot of money and resources on enforcing that, right? Like lawyers spend time and whatever. And okay, so I'm done. Yay. If you want to talk more about this, I have so much more to say.
Okay, quick note before we start the next talk.
Well,
the fact that you played that and like sort of like bumps it up a little bit so that your friend rank with them goes up, and so when you're just randomly playing online, it's like finds the 15 people you've most played with and like pairs you up with them, so that you're actually building a relationship with people online in a sort of like automatic system. And maybe you don't like someone, so you downvote them and you say, I don't want to play with that dick anymore. But you make it so that the natural behavior of the system is to encourage people to build relationships instead of to have this sort of very like shallow experience with other people. And so if you do that, that seems like a really great opportunity. There's like other various things that you can be doing, like it's difficult to play with my friends because we all have jobs. So how about having it be that there's, and people are trying to do this with like experience rewards on weekends. That's not the same thing. We need to have like periods of time when it's clear, who's going to be playing the game when, and so there should be like video game happy hours that enables people to know their friends are going to be at the bar at the time that you're going to the bar at, so you meet them at the bar. Except for the bar is a video game. These just seem like very sort of like basic things, but we need to start this conversation. We need to have people doing more things in this vein. And like you could go even completely crazy and just like absorb it as your form of development, where like maybe you write you're a crazy engineer and you code your system in a way that anyone who writes code, it uploads it. You're all playing online because you're making a co-op game, and the code you write automatically gets uploaded so that you're playing in this kind of like improv system where all the code is running. You trust the people you're developing with, and so I make a new game entity and I'm automatically making a multiplayer game by myself is actually really difficult. And so the idea is that like when making multiplayer games, it should be that like you're automatically in the multiplayer experience, and we need to figure out how to engineer that. So that's it.
The idea behind where we're going with these games today is that they are not collaborative enough. Games today are very much versus. They're very much about antagonistic relationships. You can probably count on your fingers and toes the number of games that actually are dependent upon playing together and cooperatively. And most of them are PvP, okay? Such as League of Legends, most Battlefield team play games, Unreal Tournament team matches, etc. Rather, I want to look at a game which is in the pen and paper market called Mystic Imperium. It was out on Kickstarter a while back, wasn't that famous, didn't do amazingly well, but it introduced a really new concept that I've been chasing for a really long time, which is collaborative storytelling. You share game mastership in this game. Game mastership passes counterclockwise while player turn passes clockwise. In this game, a large part of it is about developing your character, how you play your character and how you role play your character, change what powers your character gets. And this is all decided by the other players through consensus-based methods where you pass your character sheet around at the end of the game, people mark down what personality traits your character displays. At the same time, you develop the world called realms through interactivity and collaboration. One person says one thing, the next person builds on that, and further and further, for a collaborative, consensus-based role play. What my team, Fancy Out Studios, is now making is a game called Rebuilding. And what we've been studying is how to get people to communicate, how to get people to collaborate, how to get people to work together. Sure. So, in these games, you need to find ways to encourage communication. You need to find ways that, and bars and gates that prevent players from continuing unless they communicate and collaborate and speak with one another. And these things, these consist-based, produce this really strong, close-knit, friendly, welcoming communities. Okay, at the same time, they can produce very ugly communities when they turn the wrong way. If somebody comes in, some complete new, he starts screwing things up for everybody, it's so based around cooperation, he's going his own way, these communities can turn on him. You have to find ways and solutions to prevent this. That's why we're still studying how to. But the key elements, the focus on cooperation, on collaboration, on working together to achieve goals, is something that we all need to focus on. We want to make the internet a better place. We want to stop vitriol and evil and acidic personalities in Xbox Live. More games where you have to be nice, where you have to work together, where you're not fighting another person, where you're never fighting another human being, where you're working together against an environment. I would even go as far as say that we could toss out AI-driven entirely opponents and go for mazes, puzzles, environmental challenges, something Journey could have done and never did. Okay? What The Way did, much better. If anyone here remembers The Way from last year, okay, which was a game very similar to Journey, but rather than just having the players together and moving together, you had two screens, and one player could see the other, and you could make gestures to show where the next platform was because it was visible to one player but not to the other player. And in this, I think we will find a new solution, a new age of games where rather than fighting one another, we cooperate. And we will find a way to actually work together and find a much more friendly and cooperative and communicative community from that. And that's me. I'm Jack Tate. I've got business cards if you want to trade later. Nice to meet you all.
Yeah, next up is Aubrey Serr of Wolfire.
This is going to be kind of a practical talk, right? You guys have been at GDC, you've looked around. I've seen a lot of white guys, age 20 to 35. This is not a problem with being a white guy, like I'm one, right? But it's a demographic problem. And the reason it's a demographic problem is because game developers all come from game players, right? If you never play games, you never become a game developer. And if all of the games that are available are unappealing to you, you never play games. So my talk is sell on the market the way it is now, with the current market, which is basically tasteless kids, predominantly, right? Like that's the biggest wedge. And still make the game that's meaningful. How do you expand the market so that you can get more people playing? So the idea is that you kind of hide when your game moves. And here's some techniques that I think work for that. So, as a preface, don't trivially exclude players from your game. Like, a lot of people loved Half-Life 2, but I personally really found it annoying that this woman was constantly hitting on me, right? Like, my wife really didn't like it, right? She didn't want a woman hitting on her the entire game. It bothered her. That kind of decision trivially alienates more than half of the population, right? Just automatically, more or less. You don't need to do that. Like, even Pokemon started offering like the option to play as a male or female character at the start, right? So that kind of, I think that's a given, right? You have to be aware that there's certain decisions you can make that's just going to cut your market in half. So, okay, I'm going to focus on just talking about the widest spectrum kind of market wedges that are right next to the main demographic, right? Like, that are, you can probably target also. So,
Jake Elliott is right there.
let's see. Like, the reason you need to make money is so that you can survive as a game developer, right? People, you can't survive as a game developer. You're not going to be able to make these really awesome, innovative games that have a big reach, that expand the player base, right? Like, it's part of the fundamental problem. So, one really easy way to, just get to the meat here. Like, put text in your game. Most players aren't going to read it. Like, most kids, they're just going to completely ignore it. You want to really mess with them, have a voiceover, have the subtitles say something different, right? Like, just use words differently. Like, if you have a game that has a space marine, you could call him the Uber Marine, right? That sounds cool and tough to a kid. Or you could call him the Ubermensch, which means something totally different to people who are familiar with philosophy, right? There's like, you can quote text from books that are very popular. Like, for example, the Bible. It's pretty popular. A lot of people have read it, but you automatically tap into a bunch of people who will start recognizing it. Or like Harry Potter, right? Like 450 million copies of the Harry Potter books have been sold. So like, you can drop references in that a lot of people are going to get, but it doesn't have to be like, it could be Catcher in the Rye, it could be any book that a lot of people have read, that you're just going to automatically, 14-year-olds aren't going to get it. It's not going to reduce their enjoyment of the game, but other people who are more educated are going to like the game more because they understand it, right? So you can put in other languages. Have you guys seen the show Firefly? They drop in Mandarin Chinese, 800 million Mandarin Chinese speakers, right? So just by putting in, like, it didn't reduce anybody's enjoyment of that show. I think that there was Mandarin words that they didn't understand. You can include other language words. You can include technical terms from different, like, jobs, just based on research. And uninitiated players are just going to take those as neologisms, right? They like those. Like, if you've played Gears of War, they use words like torque bow or grind lift all the time. They're meaningless, but you can use words that are actually loaded with a lot of meaning in the place of those neologisms. So, let's see. I had an idea for you can go to the meta level, right? So, like, I had this idea for a game in which the game is you're taking footage of the game and you're uploading it to YouTube, and it's kind of like Pokemon Snap, right? Where you're getting like points in the game for uploading videos to YouTube. But the videos are all like, they suggest that you tag them all with all stuff that's going to increase your own viewer metrics on your own YouTube videos. So as soon as the player thinks about what they're doing in the game in terms of what the game developer is doing, they'll understand that they're doing the same thing, right? In other words, that the player is being played and the game is kind of predatory, right? That it's all about driving traffic. so they come to a deeper understanding of the subject matter because there's this meta level of meeting. So I could talk more, but I think my talk those are the main points. Thanks for listening to me. Hopefully we can get more people, find more people who are interested in playing games, right? More educated people. There's lots of 25% of the US population has a college degree, right? That's a big demographic. There's all these huge untapped markets, and if we just need to get those people playing games so that one day they can be making games and have people to sell to. That's it.
Next up is Paul McGee.
Hey everyone, I'm Paul. So I'm here to talk about why technology has become the opium of our generation, and why computer games are killing us, and why we need to do more with them, not only just make more. So yeah, lots of random thoughts, not made at any time. This is just me a rant for 5 minutes about why we need to create slower games so to give more time to thinking. So contemporary life is just pure junk. Basically, our increasingly secular culture has minimized the space for thinking and ritual time thinking. And games are one of the worst culprits. Games are spread into everything. Every second that you live, you can play a game to do that. Even sitting on the toilet now, you can play an iPhone game to suck up that little bit of thinking time that you once had. So yeah, we're just creating distractions, and I think we could be doing much more than just that. And I think there was a quote in the Indie Games talk the last day, which was great, which was Jay Chastain talking about the same thing, how games are junk. One solution to this is, instead of being consumers, to become creators. I think everyone agrees on this. We need more people, more voices, creating games, and we need more personal games. But I still think this is missing a kind of final piece of the puzzle, which is, I don't have the answers, but I think looking into how time is a core component of games and what we can do with it to make really interesting things, to make people think instead of trying to not worrying about losing their attention for a second, but giving them the space to consider topics. To look at other media, I think it's really interesting. Something like film, traditional blockbuster film, if a whiz is past 24 frames per second, you don't have time to consider anything. You're looking at one explosion to the next explosion, whereas something like a comic book is more interesting, or even a book, because you can pause it, you control the whole experience. I think that's interesting because in games you control the experience as well. You control how fast it flows, you can stop at any moment, but we don't do this. The doors open something like Call of Duty, it is the equivalent of a blockbuster movie, just explosion after explosion, whereas we could be doing more interesting stuff. And even in film, there's been this whole history of experimental film, and even great European films like Tarkovsky and all Russian, but all that kind of stuff. I don't think it's a coincidence that these films are among the most slow. I think it's quite interesting. It's a different kind of thought process people get into, and even something that's not intentionally so boring, like Bergman or something. That is very kind of purposeful, and it isn't about just whizzing past. And of course, there is games that do this. There's things like A Slow Year, which is quite interesting, and these kind of meditative games like Vesper, which again is getting back to the ritual idea. So you come through it every day, and you can contemplate the moves you make through very little input. And this gets, the Telltales have talked about it before, but their solution, I think, is very defeatist. They think to create this kind of space for thinking, you need to remove interactivity altogether, which I think absolutely is the wrong approach. They feel that if you're controlling something and doing the actions with that reflex, you don't have space to think and consider, and I think that's really defeatist. I think there's more we can do. Another game that might have done it more successfully, but again, it was very linear and very close, was Dear Esther. And where they opened up was in the idea space. So creating more ambiguous thoughts, piecing it together in different ways, and again, letting people think about what's happening rather than presenting this is fact or this is what it is. But I think the game to date that's probably been the most successful, a little bug in my notes, was Cart Life. Cart Life is really interesting. He wasn't trying to create, because he came out of total left field. That's what we need more people who are not within the game space, creating games based on games they love. We don't need any more games that are reflex. Well, with Cart Life, he wasn't interested in creating a fun experience or enjoyable experience. He just wanted to recreate something that he felt really true about and see what came from that. And I think a really big part of this kind of stuff is what the audience brings to a piece, and Cart Life, that's huge. I think that's really interesting. We've got a bunch of stars here, so let's get next page. I think there's a conflict at the heart of it as well, which is, okay, so we don't want games that waste your time, but also I think we need time to get to something. I really love Richard's quote about Tart Life, which is something like transcendent, about boring entertainment, and this really gets to, I think this gets to this idea of like poiesis, which is like a master craftsman like practicing his art, and through this kind of repetition, this boring repetition, he attains to like a different kind of insight and knowledge. So how can we attain that and also apply it to games that aren't just wasting time getting good at like a certain reflex? I'm not sure, like there's a really tough conflict there where I'm not sure how we solve that, how we reconcile it. And then I think our final point is we need to push ourselves as well in the material that we create. If we want to push our audiences, we need to push ourselves with difficult material. I don't mean like difficult in terms of like challenging like games, but just in terms of like what we're thinking about, what we're doing. I think with like the last couple of days, indie games have come really far in the last 5 years. We've done a lot more people making games, a lot of crazy stuff happening. But like we're not culture yet. We're not nothing. We need to push ourselves. Like there's so much left we don't. We can't get complacent. Kill complacency is my main thought. We're just barely starting out. So we do need more people making games. We need more personnel making games. But also we need people making games that aren't just like purely being enjoyable. And we need to give everybody in our lives and in our games, we need to push people to think and to reflect and create interesting thoughts and just give people time to think. Thank you. If any of that, like, grab me if any of that made any kind of sense and tell me I'm totally wrong, so. On Twitter, I'm @McGee, so. Thanks, guys.
Thank you. Is Guillaume here? Guillaume? Okay, hi, I'm Robert Yang. I'm one of the Lost Levels organizers. I'm going to time myself, I guess. And I'll slap myself. Okay, so hi, I'm Robert. I'm one of the organizers of Lost Levels, I guess. And one of the intent in organizing Lost Levels, at least for me, was a partly political aspect to it. Because I do feel like GDC does kind of exclude people just from the price itself, right? Not everyone has $400 to buy a pass to go there, or if you're lucky enough to work for a company or an institution that will sponsor you to go, or hopefully you make it into the IGF, there's a lot of ways to enter, but there are also a lot of barriers to entry. So that's why I'm one of the 4 people who really just wanted like a space to just talk, because there's so much diversity in games, and I feel like we just need to listen to each other. I feel like GDC is just really a distraction in the end, right? All this glitz, all this glamour, $1 million Call of Duty booth going at you, it's concrete, and they have booth bays and everything. I think that's kind of a distraction when really all we want to do is stand around and just talk to each other, right? That's really what GDC is about. So I think GDC is very good at some things, but it's also very bad at some things. So maybe Lost Levels really isn't intended so much to be against GDC, but I think it should be viewed as more of like a complement to GDC to kind of fill in kind of the holes that GDC can't fill in by itself. And that's all. And I want to share some cool planning trivia. So we actually organized this in about 3 weeks, I think, which is kind of crazy. And we've got like 400 signups, 50 to 60 speakers. So far it seems to be going good, or maybe I'm speaking too soon, I don't know. We were trying to figure out where to hold this, because I was more cynical. I thought only 100 people were going to show up, and then Ian was like, no, 400 people are going to show up, and they're going to bring their friends. It's going to be like 800 people. And we'll be like, no, it's just going to be 100. It's like Facebook invites, right? 400 people RSVP, only like 100 people will actually show up. But I don't know how many people are here. Maybe like 200. I don't know. But anyway, so we were trying to find a space for it, and then we were talking to all these galleries and stuff. And then one idea we had was to just have it on a series of buses, 4 buses that just drive in circles around Moscone. If we can't find a space, we should just make our own space, perhaps. I don't know. So that was a really cool idea. Maybe next year we're thinking about having it on a boat, I don't really know what we're going to do with that. We might have it on a boat. Apparently, I don't know, we might have funding from the Commonwealth of Australia. I don't really know what's going on. But I think you should try to look for us next year. I think it will be a really great event. It will be even better next year. I wanted to do a sandwich jam you might have seen on the website. It's turned, we got denied because we actually talked to LeBreton management, and they were like, you need insurance and a food vendor's permit to serve food, and if you try to serve food, we will shut you down. So I originally wanted to have like a sandwich station where you like jam on sandwich. A game jam, for people who don't know, is an event where people make video games together really fast under a crazy theme within 2 days, which is really fast to make a video game. So we were thinking of just making sandwiches, because sandwiches are very accessible. Sandwiches are my favorite food. Everyone loves sandwiches. Everyone has a favorite sandwich. So I just thought it would be a really cool idea. But no, the man kind of just stuck it to me and stuck it in me, and it was bad. Yeah. So that's why the sandwich idea kind of fell apart. But I'm kind of really optimistic about the future, and I'm running over time, so I'm going to slap myself as promised. And 1 minute, Robert. And I'm just talking about Lost Levels. I'm just kind of ad-libbing now. I don't really know what to say now because I've kind of run through all the thoughts. We were kind of concerned that we might clash with the Baby Castle stuff in SF MoMA, but I don't think it's an exclusive thing. You should go check out the Baby Castle thing in SF MoMA, by the way. It's really awesome. You should go check it out. Leave my talk. Leave right now. Just go to SF MoMA and check it out.
Stay for my talk.
Or no, stay for you're talking next? Okay, awesome. No, you should stay here then. I don't know. I've been looking at the schedule because I've been talking here. And now I'm 1 minute over. I'm sorry. Thank you. Thanks for coming to Lost Levels. You guys are awesome. Next up is Kate Compton.
Alright, so this is a talk that I have not practiced at all, and it's chaotically organized, much like this conference. Well, actually well organized like this conference, but it's going to
decentralized.
It's going to shift in content like this conference as I talk. So my name is Kate Compton. I've been in the games industry for a number of years. Almost exactly 10 years ago, I was working on my master's thesis, wow, it's been a long week so far. My undergraduate thesis at Pomona College, which I was in the media studies department, and back then there was no such thing as game studies. That was like, it was weird enough that we had media studies and we were studying films and Buffy the Vampire Slayer, and this was considered quite out there at the time. And I was the only person doing games in my department, so I was kind of making it up as I went along. But I ended up, like, just kind of through my own research, coming up with a title for my my thesis that was procedural and performative gender in video games, where I had been I've been doing some reading in feminist theory as part of my media studies degree, and I was really inspired by it and also kind of pushing back against it because the very few things that I could find back in 2003, 2004 on gender in video games all boiled down to Lara Croft has big boobs. I'm a computer scientist. Both by genetics and by training. My parents are both computer scientists. And so I have a very code-oriented brain. Who here does coding, either sort of recreationally or considers themselves a terrible coder but does just enough to get along? So there's this concept of data structures, right? Data structures are variables. The information that we feed to computers has shapes. So, if I have it an on-off light switch, then I'd store that as a boolean. So it can be either on or off. Oh wow, that goes fast.
You have 3 more minutes, sorry.
That's fine. But you can also have string values, which store a string, or you can have enums, which store one of several options, or you can have it, a floating point value, which stores, fractions of numbers up to infinity. So we're packing the information that we have about this, about our world or about our model of the world in our game into this information. And it struck me that, hey, when we're talking about gender, that always gets packed down into a boolean, if you're lucky, and a series of PNGs or whatever you're using as your texture sprites, or maybe a different model. But what other things can we talk about gender when we're talking about actually in the code? So if you guys are familiar with data structures, I'd encourage you to start thinking about the data structures that you use, or the types or the variable types that you use, and think, okay, what would it be like to describe gender as a string? So Facebook does this with your religion. So it's not just a list of, these are the 5 religions that you can pick. And so people have gotten very creative about how they describe their religion on Facebook. I think I'm a zealous agnostic currently, but if you search your friends list, you'll find lots of different ways that they're able to express themselves in ways that are not traditional religious expression. What would you do if you had a way to express your gender? Like, I'm butch femme, I'm a dude that likes buying shoes, I'm, and
shoes.
And so there's lots of different ways that you think about storing this, but we're not
selling shoes.
So this was a thesis that I wrote back in 2004, and so then I got a job, or I got a master's degree. I went and got a job for a few years. I left that job. I came back to my PhD program at UC Santa Cruz, and I'm like, okay, it's time to go look and see what people are doing in gender in video games. Lara Croft has big boobs, and I was really disappointed to see that nobody. And maybe it's kind of an odd pairing of we force women out of, or not force, but there's sort of a flow forcing women out of programming, and actually it happens with a lot of non-traditionally programmery types of people that they just kind of get gently shunted out of programming. And so we don't have people who are excited about both feminism or there's a smaller group of people excited about both feminism and programming than there is about feminism and media studies or feminism and film theory. I've gotten really excited recently. I do a lot of agent-based simulation. So I worked on Spore, I worked on the latest SimCity. So I'm all about right now, how do you put personality into abstract particles and get them to express emotion? If I have a cloud of particles, is there one that feels like it's fearful? So one of my projects that I'm going to try to do next, and this is very much a preliminary work on this, is talk to you guys, is I want to start representing gender as a function. So if I'm is my gender female, or is my gender when I'm on a dark street and somebody approaches me, I sort of veer this way? Or is my gender when somebody of the opposite gender that I find attractive comes up to me, I veer towards them? Or and so I'd encourage you to start looking in your code, in your lives, in whatever way you're using to represent the world, of how you represent gender. Because you're not just a Boolean, you are a whole set of behaviors that you have pulled from gender norms, from your past experience, from your personal beliefs, your personal desires, and just that you've assembled. So start bringing apart what you've assembled your identity to be, and start building a data structure that can actually represent that identity.
It has a sense to it. It is in our sense sphere. That feeling you do not regularly get from video games. Feeling of something being real, of being there, of space. Right now, video games are a prison. They're in a screen in front of you with 2 speakers or a headphone. You're looking into it, and you're looking into an abstract world which you're trying to see through this tiny lens. But it does not interact with your senses. It does not hit you. It does not tell you to go across the room. This is a failure. This is the old art medium. This is basically painting. We're making flat things on a wall. Now that can be very interesting flat things. They can be very thoughtful and very narrative and all that kind of great stuff. But until they really attack our world where we stand, they're not going to have that power to affect us the way that theater can, the way that interactive installation art can, the way that performance and concerts can. So we really need to find ways of bringing games into real world, not into abstract concepts. I'm not talking about GPS location games where you find your little shit. I'm talking about things happening in real life. Now there's some very easy things that we can do with this, play around with it. It's an idea I've had for a long time, just never had the time to implement, so I want to give it to everyone else. Hope someone does it. Because right now we are making games with 2 speakers. Left, right channel. Maybe if you're really high budget and you really know what you're doing, you're making 5-1 games, which have or some sort of audio sound effect thing. The reason we're doing this is because we think we have 2 speakers. We don't have 2 speakers. A lot of people are playing, client-based games, server-client games, games that are multiplayer. You have every speaker of every computer. You have every speaker of every device in the world that could actually run your game. You could make a game on phone, you could make a game on normal computer that, let's say you install it in a lab. like school lab. Every single one of those machines is running the software. All you have to do is go in, tell the system where every one of those machines is in space ahead of time, and you have 70.1 sound. You can make sound come out anywhere. Not just come out anywhere, you can make it move. You cast a fireball, it moves across the room. It hits the guy in the other corner. You don't just suddenly see this fireball moving to the screen now, you feel it. It echoes in space. And now this game will play differently in every space because of the sound characteristics of the room, the sound characteristics of the speakers. So there's a lot of other ways that we can do this. You could play an FPS game. This is like one of my great imagination ideas. Is you got an FPS game, you're sitting in a corner, and it's like Counter-Strike. You've modeled the level of the room that you're in, and you have a character that's walking around, but you do not hear the sound of the character walking around from the speakers. When there are speakers all throughout the room, the character's footprints happen in the room where they are walking. So now you're playing this game, and you hear yourself walking away from yourself. This kind of feeling, my hypothesis, is that it will feel very disconnecting, that it'll feel very powerful, especially if you walk up the stairs, you're playing the game, you hear yourself crash and fall and land inside, you hear things crashing and falling up there. You can do this purely analog. Hire a troupe of theater actors, go around and like bang pots and pans whenever you do something. There are ways of doing this as a prototype that do not require technology. Lastly, the same thing is true in reverse. Maybe not everyone knows this, it's like really, really basic physics stuff, but everything that is a speaker is also a microphone. All you have to do is take the signal and put it the other way. You have headphones and you don't have a mic, you're like, where am I going to find a mic? Take your headphones, put it in the mic jack, and yell into your headphones. It's just a universal property of sound compression. This also means that every speaker in the room is a microphone. Now you know where something is. You can record things moving through spaces. You can record interactions with people. If you have a phone, it has a microphone on it. Make a game where you have the phone and you're yelling, and you toss the phone to people and record the spatial movements. There's so many things that we can do with space and sound and our senses. Thank you.